Well, it's great to have you on here today on Gleaning and Gathering. And Martin and I have been friends for years and had been talking about my desire to have a conversation about friendship and particularly enduring friendship. I was thinking about what adjective to describe one of the books that you shared with me a few years ago by Alan Jacobs, How to Think. And in that book, he tells a story of a lady who was part of Westboro Baptist Church, and she began to think with different people, and it began to change her thinking. And it just that story, that book, but our friendship as well, really is something that just made me think about the value of enduring friendships and the way in which those shape us. And so I just wanted to have a conversation about that. It's something that we've talked about privately off the podcast as well. I'm just curious, from your perspective, how did our friendship begin?
Wow. Our friendship began. I was a kid. I was still a kid. I think I was 15 years old, 16 maybe. The year the year that you spoke at Hope Sound, spoke at Seabreeze Camp for the youth there.
Yep,
We need to look that up and see what year that was. You may keep records. I don't know
I do.
what year. Okay, so I remember you were the Hope Sound speaker for the youth, and I was just so moved by the things that you shared, the messages that you shared, and then you spoke at ICHA Youth Camp as well,
Mhm.
and I was at that event as well, and then finally I was a student at Faith Bible School, and if it was that close, then it wouldn't have been when I was 16. I'd have been 20. I'd have been a little older. Been like my last year as a camper at ICHA probably, or maybe even I was a staff there. And those three events uh, put you in my hero category. Just hearing your passion and the things that you were sharing. We had been through a revival in our church a few years before. I was burdened to see people come to Jesus, and that burden came through as I heard you talking and saw your family, and we met you all. And during that same window of time, I think that my mom actually had you and your wife come to our place and use our. We had like an efficiency apartment behind our house, and you kind of used it as a second honeymoon cabin or whatever. We may have watched your kids, or maybe somebody else
Yep,
did. Maybe the
yep, you did.
Goins. And then at IHC, I don't even remember how this happened, Eric, but do you remember when you all had the room right beside ours at IHC, and we in fact had doors between the two rooms?
I
And
do.
those three events, my parents prioritized it because my parents always tried to get us into contact with people that could be heroes for us.
Hmm.
And so at that point in time, I just felt like I felt like I had a front row, like just like private dinner with the president or something. And it was super sweet, just sweet times. Your wife is very, she's got that Southern hospitality,
Hmm.
and you don't.
No,
Um,
I don't. Not at all.
so so your wife is this very, very open person. And I remember in the beginning, we're just getting to know you, and you're a little more quiet, a little more reserved. And during that window of time, I just developed this profound respect for you.
Hmm.
But as time went on, um, well, the big turning point, of course, we talked about was when I took a pastorate in Chicago, and this had been 6 years after we met. It'd be 6 years down the road. It was city ministry because I was headed for Chicago. You and I talked about it at ICHA camp, and your excitement that I was headed there, and when I moved to Chicago, you kind of became an unofficial coach for me, just a mentor relationship. We talked often, and as time went on, I think part of what developed into a friendship is for reasons I never fully understood, because I looked up to you so much as a hero. I could feel your growing respect and appreciation for me, and that's what transformed it from simply somebody I looked up to somebody I considered a close friend, a good friend. And we talked a lot while I was in Chicago. Some of situations I dealt with, you were there to kind of walk with me through that. And so that was the genesis of our friendship, was ministering together apart. You were down in Indiana, I was up in Chicago. We only saw each other a few times through that window of time, but we developed a relationship.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations there, a lot of conversations about life, ministry, family, just lots of things. You were dealing with a lot of things personally, um, but also you were on a journey, and so there have been lots of those twists and turns in your path, and yet our friendship has endured through these years as we've gone some different directions, but that friendship has remained, and that's something that I really I appreciate about you, in that you have prioritized that. It's been something that I felt like that mattered to you, and it was something
Absolutely.
that mattered to me as well. How has that idea of ongoing, continuing friendship, even though we're not talking maybe as often as we did when you were in Chicago, but how has that affected you, or how has that worked in your life?
Well, one of the things that I think um, enduring friendships do for us is they help us stay connected to the people that we were.
Mm.
Like, it gives us continuity in our life. Think about the family that's lived in the same house for 30 years, and you build up memories. There's the door jamb that all the kids' measurements, their ink marks are up against from the years that they were growing, and that sense of continuity is really healthy for us as people. And so for me, my friendship with you has helped maintain a connection in my life that I needed to have. Just to open up just a bit about, you mentioned the journey, and I don't want that to take over, the whole podcast, because that's not what it's about per se. But what happened is, in the midst of my pastoring while I was there in Chicago, I just began to develop some really deep convictions about church membership and what church was supposed to look like. And some of those were similar to you, and some of those were different. There was continuity and there was discontinuity, but we thought through it together, in some ways. Don't want to get you in trouble here, Eric, but we did some thinking together about church. And at the end of that path for me, our family, sometime after we moved down here to Central Indiana, joined a Reformed church. And you're not Reformed at all,
No.
and I am now. And so that was unique. But in the midst of it, enduring friendships with people help keep us connected to our past, and they help keep us honest with ourselves.
Mm.
I've had a few conversations with a close friend of mine, very close friend, and where he can be so helpful is because he's known me for a long time, and he has a deep enough relationship with me. He can tell me the truth, and we're going to stick around. There's a clip online I heard from a kind of a pundit who was talking about why friendship matters, or why marriage matters. In this case, he was talking about marriage, a type of friendship. And what he said in it is, he said that marriage is good not because it creates this idyllic, loving relationship where there's no conflict, but he said many other relationships in our life, we see them as disposable, and if things don't go well, we just walk away.
Mhm.
But he said, in marriage, you've been married for 6 months, and all of a sudden the person realizes, you're having a conversation and you just blow up. And then you find out it wasn't because of what they said at all. It was because your uncle 20 years ago got mad at you, and you still carry all that baggage. And so you're dumping it on this person, but you're not going to go anywhere.
Mm.
You're going to work through what that means. And so I think the benefit of enduring friendship, genuine, real friendship over a long period of time, is that when you're committed to that relationship as something that's important, and therefore it isn't contingent on whether you all agree about everything, or whether you even always get along very well about everything. And I've been blessed in my own life with about, I would say, 4 or 5 really good, enduring relationships One of them is a family friend of ours. Our moms actually were roommates in Bible college
Mm,
together. He has been on a journey himself. The cool thing about our relationship is we've taken different directions in our journey. We don't stay in contact as closely as we'd like to, but there's a deep certainty that that friendship's going to be there, because it's actually not even just about he and I. It's the fact that our parents were friends, and so we've invested so much in that through the years that I know I could call and tell him anything, and I would he would still be my friend.
yeah.
And that goes both ways. And I think does that's so important for personal growth, for spiritual development, because we are too prone as humans to pretend that the past doesn't exist
Mm,
and walk on from it. And yet we're so shaped by the people that we were, the mistakes that we've made, the wins that we've had, the family that we grew up in, the background we came from. All those things shape us, and that's how your friendship shaped me. It's
mm,
that you keep me in contact with the 15-year-old, incredibly zealous guy that looked. I when we met, I would have been like 15. You'd have been like 25. I think there's about a 10-year gap between us.
yeah.
And I was watching your kids and just admiring your family. And now, all these years later, I see the path that you've taken and where it's led you and the beauty in your family. And then I say, there's something about that I want to be able to repeat in my own life.
Mm,
And I'm not going to find it in books. I'm not going to find it on podcasts, with all due respect to Gleaning and Gathering. Where I'll find it is in actual real friendships with real
yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that, for me, enduring friendships are important for a number of reasons, but I've been shaped by the conversations that we've had as well. Whether it's you introducing me to books like How to Think by Alan Jacobs, or other concepts that we've wrestled with. And even though sometimes we've come to different conclusions, that process of actually talking about things shapes us. It helps us to see perspective. And I think that too often in the world, we've got these the kind of echo chambers that we create for ourselves, whether it's on social media. Anybody that says something I don't like, I unfriend them. I'm done with that. And so we end up with only people that are liking the same memes, that are saying the same things, that are voting for the same candidate. And that's where we live. That's where we exist. And those are the only people we're listening to. Those are the only voices we have in our life. It ends up being a pretty nice little package, and yet it doesn't challenge us to think about things that we probably should be thinking about.
It's a tiny world. Rosaria Butterfield says, where everyone thinks alike, nobody thinks very much.
Mm, so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
I think for me, we're all on journeys, and sometimes as we are influenced by the books we read, the friends we have, the things that we're experiencing in our life, we're on that journey. But continuing to have ongoing relationship, even when people maybe come to conclusions that are different than ours, I think is really, it's a helpful thing for me to have friends from a variety of different backgrounds that continue to shape me, to continue, but especially those enduring friendships, people that I knew when I was in high school, that I'm still friends with, today, 30 plus years later. Those relationships matter to me, and not just from a utilitarian point of view. Hey, these are some people that can really help me in the spot that I'm at. But these are people that they've walked a significant portion of the road with me, and they know me, and they're able to speak into my life in ways that somebody who met me this past week can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, from your perspective right now. You say you've got, 4 or 5 of these relationships. For you, what processes, or how have you been able to maintain those kinds of relationships in your life?
Um, I've pondered this a lot since you first talked to me about us getting together for this conversation. What is it that goes into maintaining relationships? Why do they work for some people? And then you talk to other people. If you Google like crisis of male friendship or whatever, you'll get hits of people and statistics that talk about the fact, like, there are people that don't have a single, not even one,
Right.
close friend. And so I've looked at it like, what is it? Well, one of the things I think, and I actually think in some ways, looking on, maybe you are a person that really helped me with this, and that was to be able to have friendships over the top of disagreement, because that requires a willingness to allow the other person to be who they are,
Mm.
right? So of all of those close friendships I have that have been long-term friendships, none of them have taken the same theological steps that I've taken, not one. Um, and in fact, one of my very closest friends, Chris Neff, and I are very good friends. And we have conversations about Reformed theology. And to him, it is bonkers. It doesn't make sense. It's kind of dumb. And conversations with him are helpful because they really keep me humble.
Mm.
Because when one of your closest friends tells you that he thinks that what you believe is kind of dumb, it gets you outside yourself a little bit. And you're like, well, I mean, I don't think it's dumb, or I wouldn't believe it, but I need to understand that there are lots of good, godly people who don't see it the way I do.
Mm.
And it helps me to keep a contact with them. But it requires an amount of humility,
Mm.
loyalty, and resiliency that says, okay, I'm not going to make my relationship with you contingent on you and I agreeing on XYZ. Now, there are also, I think that friendships require basic commitments that you're both committed to, or else there's just not a friendship there.
Mhm.
So it can't just be, well, I'm just friends with anybody. And it doesn't matter how they feel about this or that. It's like, well, what are the things that unite friendships? And one of them is, maybe this is a little meta, but it's the fact they have to be committed to friendships.
Mhm.
So it's not enough for you to say, well, I'm friends with people and I don't let certain kinds of differences destroy that friendship. It's like, well, what are the things that we're friends about? And
Mhm.
one of those is just saying we're committed to having relationships with people and caring about that person apart from what they can do for us, what their ideas are, what their the fact that we agree about everything. Can't be that. I mentioned earlier the friend that his mom and my mom, Linda and my mama, went to school together and were roommates together. And part of what makes our friendship work through the years is I know that his family was raised with a really profound loyalty to close friends.
Mm.
Like, part of why he and I are friends is because our parents are friends. And so there's a sense where I can feel his commitment to that relationship. And it's like, well, our parents were friends, so we're supposed to be friends. We weren't friends as teenagers at all. He was kind of annoying as a teenager, and I'm sure I was too. But as we grew up, we returned to that, and so that loyalty to that basic relationship is important. I think that those are the fundamental building blocks of strong relationships over time.
Yeah.
It's to recognize it as a thing of value that you don't toss away or throw away because, well, there's a little friction. If you do that, you actually don't get the benefits of even your current relationships, because those relationships are contingent as well. And the two people can feel that. If you have a relationship with somebody and you know that you can't tell them the truth or they'll walk away from the friendship, then you just don't tell them the truth because you're like, oh, that's not going to work. But if you approach it and say, I'm going to be honest with this person because that's how we derive value from the friendship. Chris and I had a conversation, maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. I was working in my crawl space, encapsulating my crawl space, and I would make phone calls while I was down there, keep my mind busy while I'm doing some mindless work. And Chris asked me some hard questions
Mm.
about theology and beliefs, and I gave answers that to him sounded pat. And he pushed back so hard. He's like, Martin, he said, here's the deal. I don't even really care about your answers. That's not the point. But I do care that you have answers and that you're not just blowing smoke right now, because he's known me long enough that I can't do that with him.
Mm.
And I think being willing to maintain those relationships through that is important. And then the final thing is, those relationships and friendships can't be contingent on the way other people look at those relationships or friendships.
Mhm.
That's so important, because we live in a world where a lot of people care so much about how the people that don't matter look on them that they won't be friends with anyone if that causes them social friction, so to speak.
Hmm.
The weirdest experience I had of that, maybe my first exposure to that, was a young man. I became friends with him, and his life has taken some really good turns since then. He's doing well as far as I know. We're not close friends now, but we were good friends for a couple of years, a few years. His life kind of moved on. But I remember him having a conversation with me, and he said, I wasn't sure if I was going to really be your friend because you didn't seem cool enough or what. I don't remember the exact words he used. But then he mentioned two other people that were kind of mutual friends. And he said, when those two people were willing to be your friend, then I was like, oh, Martin is cool enough to be a friend. And I wasn't offended. There were certain social stigmas that young man dealt with that I understood why he thought in that way. But to me, it just felt so broken. I
Yeah.
was like, who
Who thinks
who
like
takes a
this?
vote? Yeah, who assigns a friendship coolness score to people and then creates friendships based on that? So I think it's really important to say these people matter to me, and they matter to me even if in a broader social context, maybe that creates some friction for me.
Hmm.
Maybe other people are like, "You're friends with him? I don't know about that." If we give into that, then that erodes the idea of loyalty, which is so fundamental to friendship,
Yeah.
because it's another form of contingent friendship.
Well, Martin, I really appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate the
I do
enduring
as
nature
well.
of it. And I appreciate you taking time to come on Gleaning and Gathering and talk about it. And I look forward to continuing the conversation down the
Sure,
road here. So thanks for taking
absolutely,
time, and look forward to catching with you again soon, on and off the podcast.
for sure.
Have a great day.